All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, I'm just going to put the warning out there now. If today's episode starts to sound like some major science class or chemistry class or anything like that, I am here to translate it for you because I have an incredible individual who has really dive deep into the research of cannabis and has an incredible concept. Now, myself, I've never been a huge, weed smoker or cannabis person or things like that, but I do understand as a former athlete some of the concepts and the arguments that have been made about, sometimes it's better than being pumped with opioids and being pumped with the cortisone and all these other drugs because of a lot of the things that actually they do put in your body. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with Mr. Len May. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Appreciate you, man. I'm good.
Yeah, I've been tuning in so much to a lot of the work that you have already put out there, and like I was saying, there's a lot of terms that I may not be able to keep up with, but that the overall concept I understand because you had actually, growing up, you lived through something in which I don't know if you were misdiagnosed, if you knew you had ADD immediately, but it was the weed was kind of calming you down and it was helping you, yet you were still in a situation where your parents, didn't like it, obviously, and they put you out and all that kind of stuff. So I'll let you kind of give a little bit of your background and, what got you into the, what at least initially put you on this mission that you're doing an incredible job with, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. You know, ADD is just such a interesting misdiagnosed kind of
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a disorder per se. I never thought of it as a disorder. I
Right.
thought of it as my superpower and what makes me unique. And so I never had the hyperactivity part. I was the kind of kid that would sit in class and sort of daydream and thoughts would enter my head and teacher would call me and be like, I was somewhere else. So apparently it's a depletion of dopamine. So if you have this diagnosis, you are not producing as much dopamine as the average person. So your
Mm-hmm.
brain is looking for the next squirt of dopamine. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I found these kids were hanging out and smoking a cigarette, and they asked me if I wanted to smoke a cigarette with them, and I said, yeah, I mean I'll be cool, smoke a cigarette.
Right.
And I didn't realize that it was stuffed with cannabis or
Mm-hmm.
weed. So when I smoked it, went back to class, and sort of the multiple windows that are in my head, like you would be having in your browser, they started narrowing and I could focus. I never really told anybody that it was, my quote unquote medicine, but I got off prescription medication and became sort of my go-to.
Really? So, all right. So this was happening. What what do you think led to? Because what I've learned, and again, I haven't really ever been a smoker like that, but I don't judge people who do smoke. What do you think has led to this negative connotation with cannabis or with weed? Is it because it gets used recreationally, it gets used in the wrong way? This how do you kind of diagnose where the issue has come where people are sort of seeing people who smoke weed and they're saying they're judging them in a certain way?
I mean, smoking in general probably
Mm-hmm.
has negative connotations. It's a method of consumption.
Okay.
But if you look at it, it's been used for thousands of years
Mm-hmm.
as a therapeutic medicine or a wellness product.
Right.
Queen Victoria used it for period cramps. You're looking at traditional Chinese medicine. They even have a symbol, a name for it called Ma. Uh, so there's different types of there's an intoxicating part of the plant that has THC, and there's non-intoxicating parts of the plant that still produce, beneficial value to the individual depending on what it is they're trying to address. In my opinion, it has a lot to do with the pharmaceutical industry. The U.S. government has a patent on cannabinoids as a neuroprotectant, and in the same, I guess, breath, they have it as a Schedule One narcotic, which has no medicinal purposes. So you kind of have to question, well, if you have a patent and you have multiple patents on this substance, and you're actually claiming that it doesn't have any medicinal purposes, then there's a disconnect of some sorts. And if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, this is a pattern that has happened over the years of the pharmaceutical industry when there's a plant and that plant may not be part of pharmacopoeia and not part of a therapeutic substance. But when the pharmaceutical industry figures out how to synthesize it, and now it becomes a quote unquote FDA approved drug,
Right.
now it's legal and the stigma goes away. They did this with
Yeah.
cannabis. Marinol was the synthetic version of that that they used for AIDS and cancer patients that they provided to the. So it's not, the stigma isn't the source of what the ingredients are that cause an effect.
Mm.
It's the plant, the smoking of it, and
Right.
this is your brain on drugs, Nancy Reagan kind of
Yeah.
days, I think.
Yeah. So, do you think that's kind of what you were going through as you were growing up? And, like you had mentioned, I was listening to you on other shows that you had several run-ins with your parents. Obviously now it's been, cleared up and you guys have mended. But when you were growing up, you said they called the cops on you. So they
Yeah, it was a wild experience.
Yeah.
It was
So,
wild, man. Yeah, so they would catch me,
uh-huh.
and I was sort of a defined rebellious kind of kid. And I remember I went fishing with my buddies. It was we went clubbing. I had fake ID. Went
Mhm.
clubbing and went fishing in the morning. Came home and slept till the afternoon. And my dad told me he was done with arguing. He said, "Don't bring this drug in my house."
Mhm.
Fair enough. So I woke up, I come downstairs, and I had this little pouch that had like a bowl and some cannabis. I kept in my car under the front seat. And I guess while I was sleeping, they went in my car, found my pouch. I was sitting on the kitchen table with
Mhm.
all my stuff. And I was like, "You went through my stuff?" He said, I told you not to bring it in the house." I said,
Mhm.
"I didn't. It was in the car." "Well, it's on my property, and back and forth. What are we going to do with you?" I'm
Mhm.
like, "Well, what do you mean?" Like, "Well, you got to get out." I'm
Mhm.
like, "Okay." And I said, "You know what?" And they called the cops. And two female police officers came, and I had an interaction with them, and they're like, "Oh, you're a smart ass. You know so much." They ended up, throwing out my cannabis and my bowls, and the one woman's like, "If it was my son, I'd kick him to the curb." So when they left, they didn't do anything. When they left, my dad said, "You have 5 minutes to get your stuff." So I literally walked out with a suitcase. I had a car. I had a few $100s to my name,
Mhm.
and that was how the journey started.
So was this something that was, in your opinion, now that you're looking back, was it something that was affecting your schoolwork? Like, do you sort of see things from your parents' perspective to say maybe they were justified and maybe they just didn't know it wasn't anything you weren't trying to be necessarily, like you mentioned being rebellious, but you weren't trying to be an asshole. You weren't trying to be a guy that was just a bad kid. Uh,
Yeah.
how do you, as you look back on it now, how do you kind of take in those, because that's a tough thing, getting into it with your parents and then knowing that it was actually something that now is helping you, is it's helping you deal with things and you have it under control. How do you look at back at the situation?
Well, I wasn't doing it to be rebellious
Hmm.
per se. I was
Yeah.
doing it because it was therapeutic
Okay.
for
Yes, sir.
me. I think my parents were
Just like I run
brainwashed.
every morning. It's one of those things I tell them all the time. It's therapeutic. It's the way I process stuff every single morning.
Right. That's your flow. That's
Hmm.
when you're in flow. So it was helping me with that. But, I don't blame my parents. Looking back at everything, they were
Hmm.
brainwashed. My dad really
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
understand the difference between heroin and somebody that's on the street and cannabis. Like he would point to somebody who's consuming crack on the corner
Hmm.
and he would equate that to cannabis. And I
Yeah.
think it's a lack of education and understanding. Once they started understanding, well, there's an endocannabinoid system.
Hmm.
There's endogenous endocrine. We make these molecules ourselves within our bodies.
Hmm.
We evolved with this plant, and we evolved with many different things. But through evolution, those things were not useful for us. So we sort of evolved out of those things that were part of our bodies, thousands of years ago. But the endocannabinoid system is still there. It's a primary regulating system that modulates all the other systems in our bodies. And if my parents understood the science, and I'll tell you what really helped.
Yeah.
I did a research study in college, and I gave it to them. I think they may have read it on legalization, why cannabis was illegal. But what really I think helped is Dr. Sanjay Gupta's Weed documentary. When he did the weed documentary, I think it was Weed, the first one, then Weed 2.0, and he talked about Charlotte, the girl that had epilepsy, and she was a refugee that had to travel from her state to Colorado so she can get, medical cannabis.
Hmm.
He did it on from a scientific standpoint, and I think that it helped illuminate them a little bit more.
Right. So, okay, then you kind of already mentioned this. So you're done with high school. Did you go to college right away? I know you mentioned working in the music industry, and not it wasn't something that you were able to pursue full time until you sort of met the right people. So walk us through your journey once that happened, and now you're pretty much adulting, and now you got to figure out how am I going to make this work financially and do my research and make it so because I look at it, and you're doing something in which you're very passionate about, and you're just about giving the information to people so they don't walk around judging others. And that, to me, that's a commendable thing that you're doing, but it's not something that you land on immediately. There has to be a certain flow. There has to be certain people. There has to be a lot of things that are kind of fortunate that go in your direction and say, all right, I'm able to build this company, write this book, and give people the proper information on how to go about doing this.
Yeah, I think your life is not a straight line journey. It's a
Mm-hmm.
journey that has peaks and valleys, and the decisions that you make in these moments
Yeah.
help to guide you to the next road in your journey. So when my parents kicked me out, I was basically homeless. I stayed in motel rooms for a while, then crashed on people's couches. Then
Yeah.
the girl I was dating, she let me hang out with her for a while. Then her parents said I got to go. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a journey. And then I got out of high school and I went to Temple University and I had to
Philly.
pay my way.
Yeah, I've been there. I grew up in Maryland, so I've been to
Uh,
Temple.
there you
Like
go.
back in the
So
city.
yeah, it was. We were very proud of the fact that we were the home of Bill Cosby, but we don't talk about that. We talk
Yeah.
about the other America's dad, which was Bob Saget. He also went to
Uh-huh.
Temple.
All right.
So I had to pay my way through school. I was a big music person. I used to go to Tower Records, which is it used to be a huge record store, and I would shop, but I didn't really have money at that time, so I was just looking through albums and CDs or cassettes. And then, they said they had a job opening for a cashier. So I applied, I got a job there, and I started working at Tower Records, and then started buying music for Tower Records, and
Mhm.
that's sort of one of the ways. And I was also a DJ in an adult entertainment nightclub for a while,
Mhm.
so made my money
I mean, hey,
working till
that's a
midnight.
great experience. I wouldn't mind. Would not
It
have
was
my, especially my college self, would have not mind doing that.
it was interesting. We can have I can write a book just on that
Yeah.
experience alone. But
Because
I
they
would
know
work.
their business though. Like in all honesty, those ladies, they know how to run a business. They're not stupid. You might
I
look
would
at them
say
and judge them, right?
you're right. There's a I guess a bunch that are really good and they know how to, but there's a few
Hmm.
that were into certain drugs and all that stuff, and they were a mess to begin with. But it was an interesting experience. So I work at Tower Records till midnight, then I would go DJ, and then that's sort of how I made my money. But
Hmm.
the perks of Tower Records were that you also get tickets and all these different things to shows. So I went to this concert called the Horde Festival, and there was like the Black Crowes, Ziggy Marley, all these different bands. And I
Hmm.
saw a banner of these people had a banner called the Cannabis Action Network. So I walked over to them. I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're fighting for legalization of the plant." I said,
Hmm.
"Great. How are you doing that?" "We're registering people to vote." I said, "Well, I'm already registered to vote. What else?"
Hmm.
And they really didn't have anything. So I became the president of the Cannabis Action Network. So I held a rally at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. And, it's fast forward, long story, just a little bit longer.
Hmm.
Um, my girlfriend at the time, who's my ex-wife now, she said, I got to get a real job once I was, out of college. So I went to work for Price Waterhouse. It's PW and then PwC.
Hmm.
Went to work for did corporate and went to work for a venture capital company.
Hmm.
And I was still consuming cannabis and I was still, talking to people about it, but I was just researching, learning as much science as I possibly could,
Yeah.
but I wasn't in the industry. And Then I became a commercial real estate broker for Keller Williams Commercial. I was the managing director of Keller Williams Commercial, moved to Los Angeles, and had an opportunity to get involved in dispensary space. So I got involved in the dispensary business. We ended up opening, 5 dispensaries under the same brand. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing that stuck out to me, like this was my goal. I said, if
Yeah.
there was any, I want to be back in cannabis, and California was legal. It just all worked out for me
Right.
under Prop 215. But one of the things I started seeing was two people will consume the same exact chemical variety, the same cannabis, and have a complete different experience. And I
Right.
remember distinctly one of my guys in the store said he wanted to consume some cannabis and said, yeah, sure, I have this sativa dominant hybrid. And for those who don't know, it's always been said like sativa gives you the up feeling, indica gives you the more sedative feeling. And I said to him, we have this, indica or a sativa dominant hybrid. And he goes, oh, no, 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 stuff puts me to sleep. And I was like, no, I said sativa, it's giving you the up. He goes, not for me. And
Right.
I remember that. I was like,
Huh.
well, we have to have, these individual experiences. It's not a one size fits all. So I got into the plant genomics space. I
Right.
saw a video by a guy who genetically sequenced cannabis, and I started learning that the way that we call this plant that is not really doesn't mean anything. It's the components of the plant, the genetics of the plant that really make a difference. So
Hmm.
I really got into the genetic sequencing of the plant. And then the parent company was a pharmacogenomics company. What they did was studied how drugs affect individual bodies and how drugs are metabolized in the body. So I really
Right.
started getting into the human genetic side. And had an idea one day. I said, we have human genetics here, we have plant genetics here. Let's bring those two together to help guide people to a personalized experience so they can avoid a possible adverse event. And this is, it's for the endocannabinoid system, but it's for anything. I mean, our genetic tests now do different things, but if I'm having an experience with my healthcare professional, I don't want to have them telling me, take 2 of these and call me. Well, why are you getting 2 of these? And why am I not getting 1 or not getting 4? Maybe I'm metabolized differently. Maybe
Hmm.
there's something going on in my body. Maybe it's a different interaction. And these are the expectations that we would want to have with our healthcare professionals. We want to be treated as individuals,
Yeah.
not as sheep. So that's sort of the concept.
Yeah, and that actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I definitely want to give you the opportunity to speak on the current company that you run now. It's called Edna. How do you? It's Edna
Endo DNA. So endo means
DNA,
inside.
right?
So it's inside your DNA, endo DNA.
Right, EndoDNA. So the unique thing about it is, like you said, everything is individualized in terms of what a person has. And me being a football guy, former player, coach, the whole nine, I've been a player and I've seen players actually missing practice because of it and just using it the wrong way, losing their scholarships because they are so consumed with getting high and instead of actually performing on the field. And then as a coach, as I, got into it, I remember actually having a kid come up to me and tell me, okay, well, coach, I'm not going to smoke during the season. I'm going to be focused during the season. And, as you're talking, I'm curious is how do you advise the people who are in these fields where, that we wouldn't know all of the science that you know? How do you advise us to go about telling parents or telling athletes, telling people coming up how to use it? What's the best way to use it? What are some of the things that we should be exposing or letting them know when it comes to the usage of cannabis?
Well, I think it's a personalized experience no matter what you put in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a controlled substance. So you have to be of age to be able to consume it. I don't believe in recreational use. I believe in adult use. So if I'm
Hmm.
over 21, I should have the ability to do whatever I want with my body. It's my
Mm-hmm.
body. It's my say, whatever I want. However, the idea is we met with the FDA, for instance, they asked us what is the purpose of our test. We said to help people either mitigate or avoid a possible adverse event. So
Hmm.
understanding the type of cannabinoids or a supplement that you put in your body, how is it going to affect you? What are you deficient in that can actually bridge the gap for
Yeah.
you? How are you abuse? You can abuse anything. You can
Yeah.
abuse any kind of
Right.
substance.
Alcohol
So
and anything. You
yeah,
can. Right. Right.
alcohol,
Right.
cigarettes, prescription medication, steroids, hormones, all kinds of different
Right.
things.
Right.
So
His
the
own
idea, yeah,
football.
exactly. So I mean, we work. So you brought up a really good point. We work with a lot of athletes,
Uh-huh.
and the idea is, what is the purpose of why you're consuming cannabis? Well, are you consuming cannabis to help you recover?
Hmm.
You may not necessarily have to be high all the time. You may have to reduce inflammation that's in your body.
Yeah.
So what do? So you're consuming a lower THC level. THC works as an analgesic. So it binds to your CB1 receptors, which are mostly located in your brain, your central nervous system, and it creates a euphoric feeling because it releases this neurochemical called anandamide. The
Hmm.
word ananda means bliss in Sanskrit. So this is what you're a runner, right? So when you get the
Yeah.
runner's high,
Yeah.
you feel that runner's high. This
Yeah.
is anandamide along with some adrenaline dopamine that's being pumped in your bloodstream. So you already
Exactly.
have this internally.
Hmm.
So, and it works as an analgesic. So if you're feeling pain or discomfort, it actually helps to reduce the feeling of the pain discomfort. The
Hmm.
other cannabinoids, like CBD, for instance, they bind or have an affinity for the CB2 receptors, which are located in your immune digestive system. So they help regulate immune response and they help to reduce the inflammation that may be causing the pain to begin with. So if
Hmm.
you're taking opioids or you're taking cortisone, as you said, you're blocking the pain, but you're not doing anything. Like I have a back issue. I tore my knee up. I have a meniscus tear on both sides. So there's pain. If they're going to shoot it up, it's not going to fix my meniscus. It's going to make me not feel the pain. But you know what can happen? I can hurt myself more
Yeah,
because
you
I'm
will.
not feeling
That's what usually
pain.
what happens actually. Yeah, that
Yeah.
when they retire, and this is one of my favorite shows to listen to actually was All the Smoke with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. And
Yeah.
this was my first initial like realizing of that. Like they were speaking really as professional basketball players, and they were talking about how they get pumped with opioids, they get pumped with things. And this is the NBA. So, you guys got to go play 82 games. And they were actually saying, look, this would actually be better for some people if folks would do the research and not look at it as, oh, this is just something somebody's doing to mess up their career, but they're actually doing it because they don't want to be pumped with that other stuff. And after you're done playing, I mean, you got real problems when you got all those medical bills piling up, because these were things that, like you said, they didn't actually cure the thing. They just blocked the pain. So you go play and then you just kind of go play on it and hope you're all right.
Yeah, and I know Stephen and Matt. I worked with Al Harrington, for instance, in his
Mhm.
organization. We did a lot of work for retired players,
Yeah.
and football, basketball, etc. I actually did a talk. I'll show you a picture one time. I'm
Yeah.
standing to next to Glenn Davis and Stephen and all these guys,
Right.
7 foot tall guys, and I'm 5'8". And it's the funniest picture in the world. It's me and all these basketball players. The,
Yeah.
the only one that was close to my height was Baron Davis,
Yeah.
even though he's still
It's
way
tough.
taller, but
Yeah.
like big baby will swallow you up, man. I come up like a
Right.
little bit above his elbow. So I work with so it's like the Ricky Williams and all these people because
Uh-huh.
what happens is
Oh my, and they
first
murdered
of
that man. The media absolutely tore. I mean, the 30 for 30 documentary. I mean, they absolutely murdered that man. And that, to
yeah
me, that is the real problem, because we're not giving the platform to understand why these things are happening. Basically, the way it got communicated in the media is that he threw his Heisman career, or this all the accolades that he has as an athlete, he just kind of threw it all away to go get high.
yeah
That was the issue. And it was something that was just missing in my, as a former athlete that knows and has played, again, never really did it, but I never judged the folks that did do it. Uh, there was something missing in that. There really was, because I knew playing and then going through a surgery myself, there was something missing in that.
Well, I mean, Ricky and like Eben Britton, who's a really good friend of mine, he was saying when they get off the bus or the plane, they get handed a handful of pills. And what Ricky would do and Eben would do, also they would even pretend they would take them, put in their pocket, and go consume cannabis instead. And they felt that it extended their careers. They didn't have some of those issues. But
Right.
I had a hockey player, Daniel Carcillo, on my show, and he talked about the brain injuries and all the different things that they had to suffer,
Yeah.
and we lost a lot of players to that,
Yeah.
and they're giving them drugs for that kind of thing, and he discovered cannabis was helpful for them, but also things like psychedelic plant medicine. I'm sort of like I said, I'll repeat again, whatever it is that you feel works for you,
Right.
as long as it's not harming anybody else and there's some science behind it and you're using it for your own therapeutic purposes, whatever that may be, then
Mhm.
go ahead and do that. But you
Right.
have to understand the science. And I think one of the biggest things is, you know, you have the generation, a sort of, say the hip hop generation. So when I used to have dispensaries, we were the exclusive home of Corrupt, Kush, and Method Man's Blackout OG. So
Mhm.
we were medical, but I would say 80% of our quote unquote patients would come in and get enough cannabis to roll some blunts and hang out. I have no issue with that. You do whatever it is that you want to do. Maybe it's your form of calming down instead of drinking,
Mhm.
whiskey, whatever that is. But there is a faction of people that use cannabis as number one, a therapeutic substance, number two, a medicine. So we need to look at those people as well and not have the stigma that it's just, Snoop who's has a blunt at
Yeah.
the Super Bowl halftime show in his
Exactly.
hand, which is fine, versus, Grandma Mary who has
Yeah.
cancer, who's having chemo, who's having some really bad reaction from chemo, and by consuming, a gummy or a
Yeah.
soft gel or tincture that has her form of cannabinoids in there, it's helping to address those symptoms. So yes, it's the same plant, but it's used differently by different people for different purposes, and that's
Yeah.
what we want to convey.
Yeah. So what has the resistance been? As you're going on the process and you're teaching people something brand new, whether it is the NCAA or the national leagues or the doctors, the medical professions. In fact, I have a friend, a colleague of mine, who doesn't even like going to hospitals. He believes in everything is natural. And I actually went to St. Croix last year, and the guy I was talking to was driving me around. It was for like a speaking thing. He was actually in LA and he worked for several he worked to get weed legal and all that kind of stuff. And he was telling me there's just a lot of resistance when it comes to just breaking through and getting people to listen. What has your experience been like when it comes to trying to present this information to people, the quote
Well,
unquote professionals?
yeah, I mean, the resistance is twofold. Number one, the resistance is the scheduling process. So
Mhm.
there's a fear the federal government has cannabis as a Schedule One. So means that there's ramifications on consuming cannabis at a federal level
Mhm.
and being able to transport cannabis or use it for research. Now, research has it loosened up a little bit. So you can do more research with cannabinoids that you couldn't do before.
Mhm.
But so there is a resistance on this whole stigma, as we talked about earlier in the show,
Yeah.
that people have a stigma around cannabis and don't understand that there's an endocannabinoid system. Like most people don't understand how drugs work. They just have this, okay, well, it's illegal. Well, it's legal in my state. My state made it legal, so I can do whatever I want. But federal regulations are still problematic. So, getting banking, it's a cash business. There's all these different associations with there's only one single FDA approved drug using cannabinoids out of all the different drugs in your body. There's only one called Epidiolex from Jazz Pharmaceuticals for now, but there'll
Right.
be more drugs. So the resistance is there's not enough research, there's not enough science, and being able to educate people that there is research, there is science. That's part of the friction point. The second friction point is DNA in general. So people don't understand genetics, and there's concern about safety and security of your DNA data. I had a call with somebody today. He goes, I'm kind of freaked out about my giving up my DNA. I'm like, well, why? I'm just curious why. Well, maybe I don't really know. Maybe the cloning. I'm like, well, if you were that special
Mhm.
and they're cloning humans, they can go and grab a hair sample or swab your Starbucks cup and you'd be cloned. So, I mean, maybe there's a reason why you would be concerned because if that predisposition to a condition or disease goes to an insurance company, and the insurance company makes a decision whether to insure you or not based on that, which by the way is illegal and
Yeah.
it's under HIPAA. You can't do that. But it's the same exact conversation with your healthcare professional. If you go and get a blood test the same way as you do a DNA test, it goes out to a lab, you get results, and it shows you have hypertension. They can communicate that to the insurance company as well, but they don't because it's protected data. Same exact thing. So I would say besides understanding how DNA works, how drugs work in your body, and this whole stigma still associated with cannabis because it's a plant that you talked about. All these people are getting high and not understanding that we have our own endogenous system. Those are the barriers I think that we need to kind of get out of the way.
Now, what's the way you're able to grow your business through some of these points of friction? Like, what's your day to day like in terms of getting the information to the right people? Do you kind of just target a specific decision maker and then hope for things to kind of grow from there? You try to go to every single person and explain all this to them, because I could see that being a very difficult task.
Well, you're right. When we started, my overall goal was to build the world's largest efficacy database. So, you're saying there's clinical trials. We want to show what works, what doesn't work for certain people.
Mhm.
And we started selling this, EndoDNA test online, and you go, you buy it, you bring it home, you swab, you register, you send it to a lab. Or if you've taken another DNA test, like a 23andMe, Ancestry, anything like that, you can upload your raw data, we'll interpret that and provide your report. But, videos and, having these conversations that were really helpful. But what
Right.
we learned is that we can scale much quicker if we focus on business to business instead of direct to consumer. So
Mhm.
my day is spent talking to healthcare professionals, clinic, functional medical professionals,
Mhm.
also people who own a number of dispensaries for endocannabinoid system tests. If you educate the decision makers take that information and sort of train the trainer. Now you've been able to remove the friction point from the person that's making the decision,
Yeah.
and you're not selling one test, you're selling hundreds of tests because you're empowering them to get into the DNA space. Now you'll have your own label, your own DNA test, your own reports with your own logo. So we're able to white label that experience, and we're able to scale much quicker. The other thing that has been extremely helpful is our clinical research. So being published from PubMed, having a phase 2 clinical trial at Harvard, doing 5 clinical trials at Wayne State, doing 3 in Chamonix, Montreal. All the scientific research that we're doing in publications,
Right.
citations, that's helping legitimize the science.
Man, okay, so where do you kind of see this thing moving forward in terms of like what's next, where the business is going to be in the next 10, 15 years? How are you moving forward?
We're a precision wellness company. So the way that it's moving forward is you're going to be able to, I'll give you sort of my vision. We'll pretend we're under NDA with everybody that's listening as well, but I want to get everybody excited.
Yeah.
So think about this. You're going to swab yourself, and 2 things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to have your whole genome sequenced, and you're going to have your biological age. So now, if a healthcare professional wants to see what they can do to provide a personalized treatment protocol for
Mhm.
any sort of symptomatic condition, they can do that. So you have, I'm 52, I'm biologically 47. My goal is to get my biological age down to 40. So now I have my genome, I have my personalized treatment plan. Here's
Mhm.
my protocol. It includes maybe there's prescription medication, maybe there's hormone optimization,
Mhm.
maybe there's personalized supplementation. So all my minerals, all my nutrients, all my supplements, maybe there's a CBD or a phytocannabinoid formulation, whatever it is that you decide as a healthcare professional. So
Right.
here's your protocol. We're going to get blood values as well. In 6 months, we're going to come back and we're going to see if your biological age has reduced. But in the meantime, you're also having patient-reported outcomes. So you're feeding back the system and your biometric feedback from like your wearable devices, your
Mhm.
Oura Ring, your Fitbit, your Apple Watch. all that goes to the cloud, and our AI starts
Wow.
making predictive inferences. So
I got
Aswad's going to come back and say, you know what? There's been 100 people that have similar genetics to you that have taken this protocol, and it
Mhm.
was very efficacious for them. So this is going to be suggested for, in the next patient as well. And the more we do, the
Yeah.
better the AI gets, the smarter it gets, and the more it's personalized.
Yeah, I mean, this is groundbreaking stuff. And for you listeners, I want to make sure I make the point of it's really about how you feel and what you really are passionate about. Pursuing your passions may not be popular in the moment or when you start developing it, but when you start to really see results and you're making a difference in people's lives, those are the things you got to be pursuing. Those are the things that you really got to do your homework, do your research on, and you'll be amazed in what you go out and find when you really follow that goal and follow those things that are really tugging on your heartstrings. So, Lena, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just tell people where they can get in touch with you, and kind of put all that information out there if they want to follow up? Because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that would be interested in hearing more.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I just want to say one last thing before you let me
Yeah, go ahead.
go. You said something really, really, I want to re-emphasize
Right.
this. Business is very difficult. To
Mm-hmm.
be an entrepreneur is very hard. That's why most people have 9 to 5 jobs, and they think that there's, this big pot of the end of the rainbow. It's very, very, very difficult. You
Mm-hmm.
put in a lot of work, and I think having a purpose to your work helps you overcome those obstacles that are in your way. Your purpose doesn't have to be locked in. It's an evolving thing. You
Mm-hmm.
connect to what you're doing, connect to a purpose, and then continue on. The second thing is sort of a sports analogy.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky, the greatest goal scorer in hockey that ever was, they asked him, how do you score all those goals? And he said, I skate where the puck is going to be. So it's very difficult for you to be alone on an island if you're doing something you really believe in and it's going to make a difference, but it's so ahead of everybody
Yeah.
because most people are sheep that it makes it difficult. And you're being called out. You asked me great
Yeah.
questions about that.
Yeah.
Well, if you're on an island, if you are an explorer, then the idea is you burn the boats and you explore, and there is no plan B. You put all your eggs here and you do it because you want to make a difference. You're aligning to your purpose, which creates passion. And that's why, you do what you do and I do what I do. And
Right.
tomorrow could be something else, but this is what I'm passionate about now. So to get in touch with me, the website's EndoDNA, ENDODNA. I'm Len May, LenMay, DNA, on all social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, Meta, everywhere. So I have a book. It's called Making Cannabis Personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of it is sort of memoir of a lot of stories that
Right.
affected me, and then there's specific stories of people that have used their test and what they found. And
Mm-hmm.
I also have a podcast called Everything is Personal, and that's wherever you get podcasts.
Right. Where do people go to get your book?
Amazon.
Amazon.com. Okay. So all of that will be included in the show notes as well. So, Len, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are, I'd say, what, 18, 19 years old. You have this burning desire to do something, but you're kind of being rejected because of the stigma that's been out there. Pretend that version of you has come into the Zoom room. Give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
The only thing I can say to my 18-year-old self right now is have patience.
Mm-hmm.
Patience is key and something that I've still struggled to this day. Focus on what you need to do. There's going to be some highs and lows, but at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, you're going to survive and you're going to thrive. So,
Man, that was heartfelt. And again, like from time to time, I'm gonna make sure I explain this to the listeners. The reason I close out the shows with that question is because they may be talking to you directly. If you are listening in and you may be going through something like that, I do that specifically so it gets right into your heart, and so you're able to move forward and push forward through. Just get through the moment. That's all this show has been about from day one. Get through the moment, take a good moment, go to the next moment, go to the next moment. Eventually, you'll start to become a habit of doing some incredible things. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.